What is up, guys? On this week's episode, we have Ben Gommers from Gommers Construction, architectural builder in Auckland. We talked about how he's transitioned from being a builder to graphic designer back to building again. We cover the meaning of success, how he's able to keep balance between work and business, and also everything else he's been up to in today's market. I think you'll find this one super interesting. Also, for all of you guys that listen to this episode, we really appreciate you tuning in every single week. It helps us, helps the algorithms. The more followers we get, the more subscribers we get, the more we're able to attract sponsorship and be able to put this whole thing together. So we really appreciate you guys listening. And without further ado, let's get into the episode with Ben now. What is success to you?
I think it was a learn to love it experience.
And there's always pitfalls that you can fall in, but then you've got no one else to blame but yourself.
Number one thing if you're struggling is to catch up with people about it.
Ben Gommers, thanks for coming on for a chat.
No worries. Thanks for having me, Brad.
You're obviously based in Auckland builder.
Yep.
What's happening out there at the moment? What's happening in the market? How are you finding it? Are you has your phone stopped ringing like a lot of other guys, or are you still going strong?
We've found the last couple of years have been pretty patchy. Sort of beginning of last year was a bit of a low patch for us, struggled to get through. And then I've sort of noticed a lot of builders who I know are really quiet and they've downscaled a lot. So it's definitely tough times out there. But we've noticed sort of leads are picking up. There's more inquiries. And I feel like we're starting to get out of it now, I'm hoping. Yeah,
it's been very tricky, especially in the big cities, like because we work in Australia, Sydney, Melbourne, and then Auckland, like almost like those big hubs, like have been impacted like almost more so than some of the others. I know that Queensland's still going strong, and then parts of the regions in New Zealand still going strong as well. Or not strong, but like still doing all right.
I think like there was this massive boom after COVID of multi-unit residential developments happening, and they're popping up everywhere, and they all just seem to die down pretty quickly. So a lot of the bulk work has gone, which has left people scratching to find stuff to do.
Yeah, that's true. That went off a cliff, the multi-unit stuff.
Totally, yeah.
Went from pumping to just like nothing.
Yeah, there's plenty of empty sites around where someone's hoped to have built something, but they haven't quite got there yet.
Yeah. They're like, we got the resource consent, building consents ready to go, just take it over. It's like, well, who's going to buy it, at the other end? But there still are pockets as well where people are like, that's picking up as well slowly. But let's talk a bit, before we talk about the market, the big picture. We were actually just talking before about the different generations, different generations, our generations apparently. We don't focus on the big picture that much. We just focus on what's ahead of us. Dan told us, our Zoomer that we have in the office, our producer here today. But talk to me a bit about where you grew up. I want to kind of get a bit of an idea of what Ben's upbringing was like, your vibe when you grew up, the parents, surrounding school. Like, what was your sort of childhood like?
So I grew up in Waitoki Bay, which is just sort of on the edge of Glen Innes and Glendowie. Grew up there in a family of 4 with a single mum in a big old villa that she still lives in to this day. Went to St Ignatius Primary School. It's a little Catholic school in St Heliers with about 100 kids. That was a great time at that school. Made a lot of good friends, and then moved on to Sacred Heart Intermediate for that, and was always kind of interested in maths, or did well with maths at school, and also a bit of art, a bit of English. Moved schools when I was 13 to Selwyn College. Didn't know a single person when I went there, so sort of walked into this classroom and had 30 kids staring at me, and was like, whoa, this is different. The contrast between Sacred Heart Intermediate and Selwyn College was a lot.
In what way?
Oh, just, Sacred Heart was very organised, uniform, pull your socks up, yes sir, all that kind of stuff. Selwyn was a self-motivational school, they called it. So you can imagine the difference. There was no uniform. You called teachers by their first name. So it was a different kind of school where it was more of a social place to go and talk to people and hang out.
More of a non-motivational.
Yeah. Well, the self-motivation wasn't very high at 13 years old. And so, sort of, I guess, got led astray. Like I was probably a really good boy up to that point, and then, got led astray, sort of started being a bit naughty and doing things I shouldn't, and schoolwork sort of fell away, and it was more about going to school to meet up with friends. But really, really enjoyed that time and made some really good friends and learnt a lot about different types of people. And so that was really good. Ended up staying there till middle of sixth form, where I was just at the point where I wasn't doing any work at all and hardly turning up at school. So decided it was best to kind of get a job. And friend of my mum's, her husband was a builder, and she said, why don't you go and do some labouring with Jeff? He was doing a development in Browns Bay. It's like, he'll pay you $12 an hour. I was like, sweet, that's heaps of money. So, started work there as a labourer hammer hand, and that was the beginning of it. I remember my first job was to mix trade mortar for a tiler and fill up buckets of trade mortar and run them up the stairs so he could lay his screeds. And that was about a week and a half of just moving buckets of trade mortar for $12 an hour. And that was the start of it. So it was good to get out of school and learn something, learn a skill. And I sort of did that for a couple of years. Finished up with Jeff, and then went and worked with his brother for a while. Left that job, went and worked with another builder, but was never actually signed up to an apprenticeship. So I asked my first boss, I was like, can you sign me up as an apprentice? Oh, you don't need to worry about that, mate. This is before the LBP scheme and, the regulation we have now. You just need to, learn the trade, mate, and you'll be right. And little did I know that the apprenticeship would have been really valuable. So I didn't start my apprenticeship. And then I after about 3 years of working, I switched it up. I decided I didn't want to be a builder anymore. It was too hard. I want to be a graphic designer. So I went to school and learned how to make computer graphics, logos and things like that, and thought that was a pretty cool job. Did that for about 3 or 4 years, and then I just reached this point where I was sitting in the office, looking outside the window. It was just down in Point Chev, and all these people are outside in the sun, and I was stuck in this office, and I was like, man, I just can't, do this for my whole life. Like, I just can't be stuck at this desk. I need to get out. So I ended up getting an apprenticeship in 2010, which was just sort of at the tail end of the GFC. So it was really hard to find an apprenticeship, but I was quite motivated. So printed out a CV of my previous experience and just kind of drove around Auckland, walking onto building sites, asking people for a job. But everyone was not in a position to take anyone on at that point, till my auntie's friend was a builder, and he said he'd take me on. So I signed up as a 24-year-old apprentice, and worked with this guy, Nick Edwards, who did architectural renos around Ponsonby, Greylin, stuff like that, and just loved it, like just loved the challenge of architecture and trying to make things look a certain way and dealing with architects and figuring out details and sort of, came quite naturally, I guess, and was in a position when I was a first-year apprentice where I was kind of left on this big Villareno, more or less kind of in charge, which was thrown in the deep end, but learnt a lot really quickly. And did my apprenticeship with Nick, and stayed on with him for a number of years.
I want to know what was it like when you changed? Because when you obviously the penny dropped when you were doing that graphic design stuff. You were like, I can't do this. What was that like mentally to be like 24? Because I know now we look back and it's like 24 is still young, right? But when you're 24, you look around your mates, they've all been going to uni. Some of them are now like got a job and probably drive, you probably have a mate driving a really nice like 10-year-old Beamer or something at that point, and you're going, what am I up to?
Yeah.
Like, what was it a bit of like a crisis in your head in terms of like what you wanted to do at that time?
Totally. It was a bit like, oh, am I doing the right thing? Am I going backwards here? Like a lot of the guys from school had done their apprenticeship already and they were qualified and they were earning good money. And here I was kind of years later just starting my apprenticeship.
And why did you want to go into graphic design? Because I can tell, like I look at your website, which I told you before, I think looks really, really cool and like very architectural. And then your kind of your branding and the things that you kind of implement. It's kind of like design focused, design heavy. Yeah. And so was it just kind of like, were you kind of, what I'm trying to get to was like, were you sort of wrestling into your head in terms of like who you were, in terms of, am I this like creative guy? Am I this practical guy? Was it a bit of that?
I think I didn't really feel like I was a builder. I didn't really feel like I fit in on site. And I've always been pretty intrigued by design in general and just things that look cool. And so it was like, my sister's a graphic designer. And so it was like, oh, her job's cool. She gets to design all these like cool books and stuff. I want that job. I want a cool job. So got along really well with other people in that line of work. But I think I realized after I left graphic design and went back to building that architecture is design as well. And as a architectural builder, you are a designer in some ways because you're making it work for the architect and you're sort of filling in blanks or changing details. So it was a bit of a hybrid of design and building, which fit quite well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's, and only later on, right, you started to realize that. I think early days when you're just doing foundational stuff, you're digging holes, you're getting your wheelbarrow license, that's not very design focused.
No, not at all. And it took a long time to click, like, oh, actually, this is a kind of design related job and there is a lot of cool stuff to be built. So that's what we try to focus on is interesting projects. Yeah.
I wonder how many people like just don't get it, like really like something but don't get into it because they don't look like the average person, right, in that career.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't the most practical labourer, growing up with a single mum. I didn't have my dad around to kind of show me how to do stuff. So I felt particularly useless, starting as a hammer hand and just not knowing anything about anything. But I think what it went well because I could think about what I was doing and do a good job, basically. So that the boss was happy with me and
So where was your dad? Did he?
He's in Auckland, but he's just sort of wasn't around much,
Right.
Yeah.
And how old were you when he?
I was 5 or something. Yeah. So pretty young. And I mean, I had my older brother who's an accountant, who's not particularly practical either. But we did the boy jobs, chopping firewood and things like that. So there's a little bit of that. But you soon realise when you go to a building site how much you need to know how to do things physically, right?
Was there like a bit of an insecurity there as a young guy, not having like a male figure around to kind of show you the way? or did your mum just sort of pick up where your dad may have left off, or a mixture between that and your older brother? Or was there because who did you get your, in terms of male role models, and was there sort of people that you chose at different times to kind of sort of being a pseudo mentor? Or
there was I worked in Perth for my uncle just before I went into graphic design, and I worked over there for about 8 months building, and he was a great sort of, he taught me a lot over there, and sort of I lived with him, and he trusted me a lot to kind of, he'd send me on these missions to, go to a job at a school, and I'd have to go and load up all the materials on the trailer, and then I'd have the ute, and I think I was 17 at the time, and it was like a school full of kids at lunchtime, and I had to reverse, I just remember this moment where I had to reverse the trailer full of materials through a school of kids, and I was by myself, and I was like, man, why is he letting me do this by myself? But it was all good learning, right? And good character building, I guess, to set me up. Yeah.
So that 8 months you spent there, you think was quite pivotal in terms of like you becoming a young man?
Yeah, and my first sort of crack at independence I was still only a labourer, but being trusted to kind of do stuff and realising, I can actually do a lot of stuff by myself. I don't necessarily need someone there telling me what to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it was a pivotal moment in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I can relate. I think my mum and dad divorced when I was about 5 as well. So I can kind of relate that, where it's like a little bit, you do sort of flounder a little bit this first few years, just kind of like there's no like male figure around and you kind of crave it.
Yeah, yeah.
So, especially when you're young, So it's always good to kind of like pick a little, like you kind of get little male influence mentors throughout, and it doesn't have to be one person the whole time, but can be sort of
the building site's a great place to get, mentors. There's just so many talented people out there, right, to steer you in the right direction, and also like examples of how not to be as well.
Yeah, 100%. No, because builders are just good. Most builders, not all of them, but most builders are just like good dudes. You know what I mean? Like good down to earth guys, and you can learn a lot just mentality wise as well.
Yeah, I find that people really enjoy teaching young guys how to do stuff, right? They get a kick out of it when you teach someone something and then they get it. It's pretty satisfying, yeah.
Yeah. And so, okay, so you got your apprenticeship, or you went through your apprenticeship. How long did it take you in the end to kind of finish it?
The apprenticeship, because I'd had sort of 3 years prior experience, the apprenticeship only took 2.5 years to do, because I was like, man, I've got to get this done, right? Like I was every weekend just smashing out the bookwork, going to night courses. I think I knocked all the theory off in like a year or just over a year. And then I was just kind of time on the tools and hounding my boss to sign me off, basically. So that was really quick. So I kind of, in some ways, caught up a bit to the other guys from school who'd already got their apprenticeship. And then, applied for my LBP license straight away, which is pretty unusual, but just, kept pushing, like, I can do this, and managed to get my LBP, so that set me up. And then after I got my LBP, I kind of realised I've been working for the same guy for, a number of years. I could probably see what else is out there. So I started thinking about that and other mates who are builders, and went and worked with them, and ended up kind of hopping around a bit, but then going back to my boss who I used to work with, because we just worked well together and he wanted me to come back and run some projects. So
yeah,
that was the
Was it like a grass greener on the other side kind of thing at that time, or you just wanted a variation?
I wanted more money, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give us more money. And if that, it's always hard like that, because if they see you, I'm always of the belief is how someone meets you the first time is how they kind of see you forever.
Yeah.
And if you're an apprentice and you
That's
start,
right.
and now you're qualified, you have your LBP, you're a different person, you're
That's
qualified,
right.
but they still kind of see you as,
That's basically
being the
what happened.
apprentice.
Yeah. So I had to kind of call his bluff and said, look, my mate's going to pay me this much. So do you want to match it? And he was like, no, you go work for your mate then. So it's like, cool. And then I think he rang me up 2 months later or something, oh, come back, I'll give you more. It was like, well, that was a big waste of time. But it did change the dynamic. And I think he realized the value there in that increase in wages. So I went back to him, and it was a different dynamic. And I think it is possible to have an apprentice. I mean, I've got Jared with me. He's been with me 9 years. So he started knowing very little. Now he's sort of running a project. And so I think it's possible to change that relationship over time.
Yeah. So then how long did it take for you then you went back to the old boss, doing a lot of those sort of villa renovations, like city fringe, like those beautiful kind of projects, which is cool.
Yeah.
And then how long did that take until you were like, hey, I'm going to go do my own thing?
I think I went back to Nick for 2 or 3 years, and then I'd planned to build my own house, and so that was the moment where it was like, all right, I'm going to go and build my own house now, and then I'm going to start my own business for myself. And so I got Jared on board as an apprentice, and we built my house in 2017. We finished. And it was like, cool, I'm going to set my own business up from this point. Perfect way to start, right? Built this house. It's good show home, to show what we can do. And we did a really good job of it. And then I got this call from another builder who was friends with another friend of mine who's an architect. Oh, mate, I could really do with a hand on this job. And I was like, I was going to kind of set up my own business, but I didn't have really any leads or any real direction. I was just kind of hoping that I'd build my house and everyone would just come running.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, that's probably not a bad idea to go and work for someone else with Jared as a kind of labor only contractor. And that was for Boyd Cox. And Boyd builds, kind of $20-30 million, projects that are outrageous. Like, so we went and worked for him for 3 or 4 years. And during that time, I kind of took on another apprentice and then another apprentice. And then it got to this point where there was a team of 4 of us that were all working under Gommers. And then the foreman who was on the job, he had to go to another job. So I was kind of like left there to run the job. And I was like, this is looking a lot like my own business. I should probably do my own thing. And so that was the point where I got a job for a friend of ours. This was a hell of a job. It's 1,000 square meter commercial building in Ellerslie that was like clad in asbestos. Half the walls were rotten. The roof was asbestos as well. And yeah, my mate was like, well, we want to turn it into commercial offices. And so we just jumped into it, and it was just it was a real journey, but it meant I could take on another guy, and then before long there was another person who wanted to do a reno, and so it just built quite naturally. It wasn't like I didn't force trying to grow this business. I didn't market myself at all. It was all word of mouth and slow sort of growth. And learnt a lot very quickly about what to do. Yeah.
Was that quite nerve-wracking, like taking on a big commercial?
Yeah,
for
totally.
you at the time would have been like a huge commercial project from your point of view.
Yeah, very different to all the work I'd done previously. And the scale of it, this place is huge. It's like, what am I doing here? But you just keep going, right? And you just keep at it, and you get through it. And it turned out to be an amazing job, and the clients were really happy. So it was good.
And so you just grew it sort of slowly but surely. And then how did you start getting it? So then did you start getting in more with architects, or was it more clients coming to you? What was the relationship there in terms of the networks?
So a good friend of mine, Rata, who designed my house, had his own practice at the time. And it was pretty much like me and him were going to, he was going to design them and I was going to build them. So I had a good relationship with him. Unfortunately, a lot of the jobs that he designed didn't actually go to the point where they got built. So I'd put all my eggs in the one basket in some way. I thought I sort of relied on him too much. And then there was this moment where we priced this job for him and it fell over. And I kind of went, I've really got to put myself out there. And so I just I put together an email and just emailed all the architects that I like and said that I want to work with them. And actually got more response, like positive response, than I thought I would, and got a couple of jobs out of it. And that was sort of the start of it, basically. I mean, it's still early days, but we're starting to build good relationships with architects, and a lot of jobs, other than through architects, have just been through people I know, right? Like some people find out you're a builder and they just want you to come and have a look at this job that they want you to do. Yeah.
And so with the architects, do you think that there was some sort of alignment there because of your like love for design and you being a graphic designer in the past, and you kind of like, was it sort of a matter of like you guys were just speaking the same language when you caught up for a coffee for the first time? Or why do you think the architects wanted to give you an opportunity?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure. I think there is an element of that. Like they look at the kind of work we're doing, but also even just the way you connect when you meet them, stuff like that. I think for architects, having a builder who's focused on the design is really critical. So if you're on the same page with design and getting the best outcomes, then architects are going to want to work with you. Yeah.
How do you think builders get it wrong sometimes when they reach out to architects or they try to work with architects, and like, how do you think they sort of approaching it in the wrong way?
I've seen builders over the years who are really almost anti-architects. You know what I mean? Like these guys and their silly drawings and nothing makes sense. I think you've got to focus on collaboration. So you're working together. You're a team. You've got to communicate constantly about, if you're going to change a detail, this is what I'm proposing. We do a lot of that. So we kind of look at the drawings. Inevitably, there's something that comes up that isn't possible to do the way they've done it, or you can see a simpler, more cost-effective way of doing it. And we'll draw details and we'll send them to the architect and we'll discuss all these things. And most of the time, they're like, sweet, this is great. You figured it all out for me.
Yeah.
And so I think taking some of that pressure off the architect is good, because you don't want to have to get them to draw every single thing, right? Like it's quite a slow process. If you're on site and you're looking at this junction and you can just sketch up how it's going to go and flick it to them, it's a lot more efficient than them coming out to site, figuring out what the hell you're talking about, going away, drawing it, and then sending it to you.
Yeah. Yes, definitely, especially once you get into the really high detailed architectural work, it's like dozens and dozens and dozens of those examples you just mentioned, right? Like how we're going to bring this together, and that collaboration pieces. And I've always kind of said that there's not, like, builders a lot of times don't maybe even understand their value, because there's just no one that can do that sort of practical, and especially if you sort of understand a little bit of the design element, like that practical element of making it work, and sometimes making it work more cost effectively, and like even taking a very complicated engineering concept and like simplifying it a bit more, and then actually making the engineering more simpler than what the engineer recommended. And the builders are just so practical, and that little sweet spot, whatever that's called, like no one can do that as well as a builder,
Yeah, and I think it's too much to ask to rely on the architect to solve all the problems, right? Like the builder's got to come up with some ideas and try and make the architect's job easier, or make the outcome the best it can be. Yeah.
I think builders definitely like underestimate the value that they can bring, especially in those sort of areas. And I've seen that a lot with builders. So your company at the moment, how big is the team? People always like to ask that, the barbecue.
Yeah,
Do you get that?
yeah.
First question.
It's always the
How
question.
big is your team, mate? Oh,
Yeah.
Interesting.
How big is your team? So we've got 8 guys at the moment, including myself. And that's, I am admin, I am office, I am pricing, I am all of those things. Everyone else is on site on the tools. So
And what's the breakdown? Like how many qualified versus how do you sort of structure your sites?
yeah, well, it's we've got each site's got a project manager, site foreman, who's all over the job, and then we've got
And that's a hybrid role. They kind of do the project management and
I'm project manager overall for everything, but I guess they're more of a site manager,
right?
For day-to-day operations of the site. So I've got a couple of really senior chippies, and then I've got 2 apprentices who are pretty green, and then the balance is made up of qualified builders, who've been qualified between a year and maybe 3 or 4 years. So it's changed a lot, even, over I've been operating as a main contractor for 4 years. Started out with kind of just heaps of apprentices and me. And so it's been great to see that transition where people have grown and their capabilities are greater, and all of a sudden things are a bit easier. Yeah.
How important is it to hire people that are like either, better than you versus, or at least know what they're doing versus, because you get sometimes that point, I fall into that trap, you kind of just get like you and a bunch of helpers, everything just revolves around you, right? How important is it for you, or has it been for you to hire like more, people that know what they're doing to kind of run elements?
Yeah, it's a huge difference, right? Like if you can get someone who's been a builder for 15 years and they've run projects and they know architecture, I mean, they take care of so much of the stuff on site. It's just, I'm still involved a lot, and we talk on the phone multiple times a day about everything. But in the initial stages, when I was doing everything, it was just way too hectic and way too hard to control. Yeah.
And how did you transition? What was that point? There's so many builders that I talk to that it's that point, that is sort of like they're running around like a headless chicken. They go pick up the materials. Everything revolves around them. Nighttime, they're quoting. Forget their children's names because they're not around. You know what I mean? How did you make that transition? Was it like, did it need to start with like a mentality shift, or how did you kind of go from that to where you are now?
I think I'm still working on it, to be honest. But I don't know whether it's even a conscious thing or whether it's just over time you realise the benefits of having other people do other things and having people upskill. You get them to this point where you're like, oh, I can actually offload that to you, which gives me more time. But it's still a work in progress. Like I'm kind of, there's a couple of chippies working on this job in Devonport at the moment who are not like senior chippies, and I'm trying to build them up to kind of run a project. But this project's a bit too complicated to sort of throw them in. So I'm sort of half there managing that job. I think I'd like to get to the point where I don't have to be on a particular site at any time, and then can kind of manage everything a bit more effectively. Yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of you'd be sometimes on site. Do you still get the old tool belt on?
Yeah, still got the tool belt. Yeah. Probably on site there 20 hours a week.
Yeah.
And put the tool belt on mainly to use a tape measure. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to like feel like you're part of the boys. Yeah.
Yeah.
And okay. And so what sort of projects are you guys working on? I've seen like your projects that you've worked on in the past, obviously on your website and socials. Cool, really cool projects, right? So what sort of projects are you guys working on now? Is it a lot still of that, obviously architectural? Is it some sort of more modern, some sort of more like kind of villa work? What?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a mixed bag. So we're doing a new build in Devonport for Elmore Booth, which is a 280 square metre new build.
Cool.
That's a beautiful house. It was going to be a beautiful house. So that's that's our sort of biggest project. We're also doing a villa renovation in Epsom, which is it's not our typical. It's a nice job, but it's a house that was actually flooded in the Auckland floods and just sat there for about a year and a half before building consent and everything was ready. And we've lifted the house up 800 mil off the ground so that if it floods, the house isn't underwater anymore. So that's been completely different to, our typical, I don't know if we have a typical build, but it's been a good challenge, something different. And then we're doing a small renovation in Grey Lynn at the moment, which is just a classic, take a couple of walls out, put in some big joinery and a new kitchen. Yeah.
How do you attract good talent? And then once you get them, how do you kind of cultivate a good team culture to make sure guys want to stay around?
Yeah, so we like to attract talent, I guess. A lot of the guys I've got on board are they've been recommended by someone. So I've never actually really advertised, for a job for someone. It's always been, I know this guy and he's a builder and he's looking for a job, and that kind of thing. So we've managed to get quite a good team of people who are on the same page. The culture thing, I think, is really important. And as far as I'm aware, my guys really like coming to work and enjoy being involved. We get a lot of good feedback from clients around the team and how they are to deal with and all that stuff. I think keeping things chill on site, is really important. Like I've worked on some really hectic sites with a lot of stress, a lot of, aggro, and I don't think that's productive at all. So by keeping things chill, I think is really beneficial for the culture. And we try to go to the pub, once a month at the end of each month and just sit down and hang out, have some beers and not talk about work too much. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's super important. How do you think because we talked a little bit off air before about different generations and how you need to understand them and sort of be able to cater a little bit to what they care about, right? Mm-hmm. How do you find the sort of young guys coming through and what do they sort of care about in terms of a work environment and the type of company they want to work for, do you think?
I think, there's been a massive shift in my experience in the industry in the way apprentices are treated. There's a lot of I'm up here and you're down there sort of stuff when I was an apprentice or when I was a labourer. Big egos and kind of, you're just the apprentice, nothing. To now, like I had a guy work with me who really enjoyed working for me because I let him look at the drawings and it was like, of course you got to look at the drawings, man. We're building this house. Like you need to know what you're building. And he said that the previous guys he worked for, they wouldn't let him look at the drawings. And so it was very much like, no, pick up the broom and sweep up over there, which I think is pretty counterproductive. Like the more you can get apprentices involved and feel like they can take some responsibility and look up what they need to do, the quicker they're going to grow and become more useful. Yeah,
I think it's a different generation, eh? And I think that you need to be, you got to meet them where they're at, in a way.
You got to be careful, how you treat them and what you say, especially these days, right? Like the old days are over. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of like you kind of still need a little bit of, guys still need to earn their stripes. Mm-hmm. But I think you could take that too far. And then at the same time, I think that this generation coming through that it's not. They're not hierarchical. That's a hard way to say. They're not like they don't believe in the hierarchy how we used to maybe when we were younger, right? Like there's like a real hierarchy of things, and so they come in and they respect people, but they don't. I don't know if they like respect a position as much as we did when we were kids. They kind of, from their point of view, they They kind of more like, yeah, we all. I respect almost the fact that you have more experience, but not that you had to have a position, so to speak. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think it's good to be. I think it's good if everyone feels equal, like on site. Like I think obviously someone's going to have the responsibility and the final say, and that's cool. We can all appreciate that. But I think, coming to site and feeling valued and feeling like you're part of this team and you're all on the same level is really important. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So you get all a bunch of amazing work. So that's nice. Must be nice.
Yeah. Well, we're getting there. Yeah, it's been a bit of a journey, but I feel like we're getting some good work and some good work coming up.
How do you take people? Like, do you have a sales process that you run through? Do you have when people come, say a client comes to you and they want to do a project? Do they pay for a quote? Do you put them? You get them to sign a preliminary agreement or some sort of early contractor involvement agreement? Do you, or do you just do you just sort of quote for free? You hope they'll work with you. What's your sort of style of when people come to you?
So it sort of depends on the client and the situation. But as time's gone on, I've realised that quoting for free is risky because you can spend 100 hours quoting something and get all your subbies to quote it as well, right? So they've all put time and effort into it, and then it just falls over at the last minute, or your price comes in and you're way over budget and they don't want to know about it anymore, and you've just wasted all this time where you could have been earning money. So I think there is an argument to charge for quotes, but so we've been doing that recently, and we've been doing sort of early contractor involvement where we put together a fee proposal to provide a service before they've even started designing potentially, or during the design process, where we can help the architect to, figure out some stuff on site so that when they're designing the build, they know all this information about what's there. And then in terms of pricing, you put so much time and effort into these prices, you break everything down, you hand it over to the client. They've then got all this kind of information all nicely compiled together for free. I just don't think that's, it's a big ask to do all that for free and then potentially get nothing out of it. So we try to charge just a small fee for pricing. It's also a good way to suss out if the client is genuine and they're willing to put a couple of grand into exploring the feasibility of this whole project. If they're not interested at all, it kind of might be a bit of a red flag, So
100%. Yeah, it's a great way of just getting rid of the taika, because it's also the thing that you just mentioned now. Like sometimes when you're so nice and so lenient, like builders can be, right? So nice. At some point, someone's paying down the line, and so that could include if someone's asking you to do something and you have to stay longer, your kids, so you're staying longer. Your kids are actually fitting the bill for that, and your wife's fitting the bill for that. When you don't think of that, right? And the same goes with the pricing thing. Like you go price, it's okay. It's just I'm a nice guy. I'll just do it. You do it free. All these subbies, they putting time in, they quoting. Now, all that needs to happen is 2, 3, 4 of those have to fall over in a row for your subbies to kind of go
That's right. We're just pricing all this stuff and you're not getting any of it.
Yeah.
It's just costing us money.
So now they fit in the bill for that. It's really affecting your relationship with your subcontractors, and having really good subcontractors that you've worked with for a long time is invaluable. It's so valuable, right? Yeah. And so I think sometimes we don't think about that when us the nice guy, and we try to do everything, try to bend over backwards.
Yeah, to get the job.
But are you the only one bending? It's kind of who else is paying for this, for you being the nice guy.
Yeah. I think clients have been really good with, when I say, look, we typically now charge a fee for pricing. sometimes there's a bit of hesitation, like, well, this builder's going to charge me, he hasn't even done anything yet. But getting them to see the value in it, right? Like, we'll put together an estimate and it's pretty comprehensive. We've broken the whole thing down. But we've also explored how it actually goes together, what the process looks like, how we actually go about building it, what are these things that we have to source, speaking to suppliers. So by the time you've priced the job, you've already talked to all your subbies about the job. They know the project. You've already talked to your suppliers about what you're going to need, how long that might take and what that might cost. So you're ready to jump into the project. Everyone's kind of lined up. So it's not just putting a price together, it's actually preparing to do the job.
Yeah. Getting the project ready for construction. And that's probably what a client that doesn't build all the time, they probably don't understand that until you explain it to them.
Yeah. So it's about educating them on, this is the process that we find works well. And, mixed reviews from architects. Some architects are like, I'll never pay for a quote. And if that's the case, then you've just got to weigh it up. Do you do it, depending on your workload? Do you just bite the bullet and price it for free? Whereas other architects are like, of course you should be paid for all that time and effort that you've put in to figure out whether we can build this job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they don't go to architects and go, okay, so you're one of 3 architects. Can you guys come up with a cool concept for free? And then I'll choose which architect I want to go with based on the best concept.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen, does it?
No, not at all. So they might go to 3 architects for a fee proposal, and they might have different rates for their concepts, but then they're going to pick one and engage them to go through that process. So I think it's changing. I think, it was always free quotes, and it was the builder being the nice guy, like you say. Like, the builder's the nice guy, so he's going to quote it for free. But I think now, especially with technical projects, so much time and effort goes into pricing that you should be compensated.
Yeah. And like you say, there are exceptions. There are scenarios where you're working with an architect and it's like, and you have to like go and tender for it or whatever. And there's people that their business is more structured that way because they want to pick up the $7 million, $10 million project, and it's going to be a blind tender or whatever.
Yeah.
And so in those scenarios, it's a different conversation. And in those scenarios, sometimes you just can't get paid for your quote.
No.
And then the quote's going to be more like a 20 grand exercise for you or whatever. Yeah. That you just have to eat. But so it does depend. But I think in terms of an average conversation with an average type of client, you're building a 1.5, even 1.2, $2 million build, I think it's good to charge for your quote, to explain to the client why it's important. Yeah. Choose the builder first and then go through the process rather than doing that sort of like get 3 quotes and pick the middle one sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it's different if you're building a really simple project, right? So it's much easier to price. You can just apply square meter rates to things. So it's much quicker to bang out a price.
And do you do the pricing yourself, or do you get a QS to help you? Or?
Yeah, I do it all myself. Yeah. So I like to go through that process because it helps me to understand the job and know everything that's going into it, so that if I do get the job, my head's in it. I think if I got a QS, I'd end up just going over it all myself anyway. So I may as well just do it myself.
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of QS, like fast turnaround QS services out there these days. And what are your thoughts on those, for more the architectural style builds?
So my experience with that is I've had a few projects that I've priced where they've already had a QS prior to me pricing. And I put my price in. We did one. The QS was about 2.4 mil and my price was 3.6. So straight away the client's like, why are you so expensive, like compared to the QS? And it's like, well, hang on, let me have a look at the QS's report and I'll tell you why they have underestimated, not why I'm so expensive. And sure enough, they sent through the report and I could just pick apart all these things that were missed by them, because by that point I knew the project so well and I was confident in my pricing. And it's happened a couple of times where QS is way under and you're way higher. So I think finding a good QS who's accurate for architectural work, you know, if you can find one that's reliable, who other people have used and stuff, I think there's definitely a place for that. But I think there's a risk there, you know, if you're getting a QS to do it and they don't quite understand what's involved, you can get in a pretty sticky situation, eh?
Who is that QS? We'll bleep it.
I don't even know what they're called, man, to be honest. Yeah, I could
Can't
find
remember.
out for you. Yeah.
No, it's all right. Find out for us. We'll just put it in post.
Yeah.
What are the numbers that are important to you now? Like you're looking at the business, things are running, you open your zero, or like, are there any sort of financials that you sort of keep a really close eye on, or overheads, or team hours? Like what sort of the numbers that you kind of look at to make sure things are tracking how they're supposed to?
Yeah, well, I mean, net profits, you know, it's the big number to look at, right? Like how much money are you making in the business? Turnovers, you know, interesting to look at. It's kind of good to know how much you're selling, basically, just to keep an eye on how that translates into net profit. But yeah, that's kind of it, man. Like overheads, we sort of had a period where, you know, things slowed down a lot, and I went, right, look at my overheads. I'm spending too much money on stuff. So I leaned up overheads and made it simpler. But yeah, I think I mainly just look at the net profit and turnover. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's important, the net profit, because people forget, you know, it's easy to just kind of just chase that revenue, and it makes you feel really good, you know. It's vanity, right? Revenue is vanity, and profit's sanity.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to kind of keep an eye on the net profit. In terms of your business now, or let's look back, not everything goes to plan always.
No.
Have you had any scenarios where things went wrong, where you sort of took a financial hit on a job?
Yeah, I've had a couple, and just had to kind of suck it up and deal with it, which was, it's pretty tough, right? But it makes you shift your focus and go, right, I've dropped the ball there. I need to be more onto it. So you learn from it. We haven't had any massive hits, but good little reminders.
In terms of when shit goes wrong, when that's happened in the past for you, like how did that affect you, kind of in terms of your mentality, mental health? Like how did it affect you at the time, or are you quite good about just kind of keeping it logical and be like, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some?
Nah, definitely not. Like in the early days, stuff would stress me out a lot, right? Like when stuff went wrong, it was this big deal, and it was quite, you know, it took its toll and made me sort of question, you know, am I really supposed to be a builder? You know, I've fucked this thing up, and I think over time you learn to get quite practical about it, and you learn to just go, well, actually, what are the facts here? How do we solve this problem? Solve it and move on. So yeah, I think taking the emotion out of it when shit goes wrong is really helpful, and just being practical. Yeah.
Have you ever wanted to, like, have you ever had little thoughts about just going, stuff this, like giving up, throwing in the towel?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I was sort of in a position beginning of 2024 where a few projects fell over, and actually the two projects that we're doing at the moment I thought were kind of dead in the water. And I was pricing for free, you know, kind of missing out on a lot of projects. And then a guy I used to work with, who's working up in Tiari, was like, mate, we've got heaps of work up here. Like, you could come up here, you could move up here, you could, you know, you'll be set. And I was like, you know, if I don't get any of these jobs, then I might have to, because I can't, you know, operate without any contracts. So yeah, definitely considered it. But I think it would be such a shame, you know, to throw away everything you've worked towards So stuck in there, and those jobs came through, and it was like, okay, no, we're good again. But it's a bit of a roller coaster, right? Like you've got too much work, and then you've got not enough work, and just trying to balance that all and keep moving is it's a bit of a challenge.
Have you ever like gone through the exercise in your head of what the steps would be of like winding it down?
Oh man, yeah, it's like easier to keep it going, right?
Yeah, you're just kind of like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to sell that. I'm gonna have to shut that.
Gonna have to finish this job, and that's going to take 6 months. And just got to keep it going.
I think everyone, like, if you've been in business long enough, you go through those exercises where your mind starts wandering, and you're just like, okay, I can just shut this thing down. Like, what will be the steps? Yeah, I'm gonna have to let these guys go, but they'll still get another job. You start like, you start running these scenarios in your head, like. And then you do that for a little bit, and you just sort of snap back, and you go, "Okay,
that's enough of that.
That's enough of that. Like, just put your big boy pants on and just get on with it."
Yeah.
So there's definitely an aspect of that. Was that the hardest time for you running your business?
Yeah.
Or was there other times?
Definitely. So we we dropped down. We got to this point where I said to the guys, "Hey guys, we just don't have enough work. Like, if any of you have any other things that you could do, even for a few weeks, just to kind of fill this gap, then do it." And so, the boys were really good about it, and they, we kept 3 guys going, and everyone else was out, working for other builders. We had put the word out to other builders, look, we need some fill-in work. We kind of found some work through certified builders, helping other builders, and just kind of bridged that gap, which was great because it meant everyone could come back when the work was there, and the team was back together. Whereas I think if you had to let people go like fully, then you got to start again. You got to bring in new people, new dynamic, new sort of team culture. So yeah, I was really lucky that we worked through those months.
Yeah. Super important to try to keep guys as long as you can, because if you find good guys, it's like gold,
Yeah,
it's very hard to replace them.
It is, and it changes the dynamic of the whole crew. If a couple of people leave who they might be really positive and bring a good vibe, and then you might bring in a couple of others to replace them later on who just aren't the right fit, or their workmanship might not be where you want it. Yeah.
So you're sort of looking around at jobs, you kind of like, this is falling over, that's falling over. You look at your guys, you like stay having that conversation. Hey guys, if you've got something else, go do it for a few weeks. Like, do you feel a bit like a failure at that time?
Yeah, totally. You're like, this is not the plan. This is not how I saw this going. And you feel like you're letting the guys down because they're relying on you to keep them going, right? They got mortgages and stuff, and so yeah, you do feel a bit like that. I mean, they were all really good about it, and just like, we know you're trying, and we know you've priced all these jobs and they haven't worked out. So it's good. It's good to have a crew that kind of understands. Yeah.
And do you have the sort of self-doubt? I mean, we all have it to an extent, but do you ever have like self-doubt creep in? Like, is this even for me? Is this like...
Totally, yeah. I think less and less so as time goes on, but there's always, I think it's good to have a bit of self-doubt. Like, I sort of say that to the guys on site, like, question everything, trust no one. Like, you've got to be really sure. And so the self-doubt is sometimes a bit of a trigger to make sure that you're gonna get it done right.
So, yeah, it's the self-doubt is something that can definitely creep in, and when that does happen to you, and maybe it's sort of, sometimes it can spiral into 1, 2, 3 days in a row if you're just like not being like, the guys can tell like you're not really like, you're 100% yourself, you know what I mean? Like, how do you, in those scenarios, are there any sort of practical ways that helps you kind of snap out of that? Because if you sort of let it go for too long, it can really start to take hold of you. Practically, how do you deal with that to be able to kind of get your mind right again? Because it's a bit of a battlefield.
I think you can get, the self-doubt, you can get almost in this negative rut where you're focusing on all the problems. Sometimes it's good to step back and go, but look at all the things we nailed and look at all the things we got right to build your confidence back up again, because you can sort of tunnel in on a problem and it's your whole world and it's the biggest deal in the world. I say it to my guys on site as well, don't lose sight of all the things you got right, because that's, if you did a 98% correct job and you had 2% of stuff go wrong, that's pretty good.
Yeah. I think it's so important just to kind of step back. And do you kind of do something physical, like you go for a walk, go for a run, do work out, go for a cold shower, anything like that?
Probably not as regularly as I should or used to, but a bit of running, bit of cycling, saunas, swimming, yoga, just anything like that, where you can just switch off, right? You can, like if you're running, you're not thinking about work anymore. You're just kind of
when you're struggling up that hill, you're not.
Right. You don't have the energy to think about work. And I remember my first boss, Nick. He used to tell me to go for runs, because if you go for a run, you're so tired when you come home that nothing phases you anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. And I know a lot of the guys actually up in Te Aro, Mangawai, they do like jiu-jitsu up there as well. And because that's the thing as well, if someone's like trying to strangle you, like you're not really thinking about work problems.
About work, yeah.
When you just pick something that's more difficult than the work, you know, then that helps you, puts the work into perspective. And you've got a couple of kids.
Yes.
Yeah. How old are they again?
My son's 11 and my daughter's 8.
Oh, cool. Okay. So, and how do you navigate that with wife, kids? Does your wife work?
She's working, yeah. So she's 30 hours a week, sort of school hours. It's definitely tricky. I think, like anything, you get better at it over time. But I try to work at home in the evenings as little as possible. Right, so if I can leave site early, come home, smash out a few hours, and so when the kids come home, I can kind of be present. That's kind of the goal.
Has there been periods where you kind of haven't done it? You've done it like looking back, kind of going, "Oh, I did that wrong that way."
Totally, yeah.
And what did that look like, and how did you?
It'd be like you're pricing. I've got to get this price done because I've got to submit it on Friday, and then you kind of like deep in some maths and some spreadsheets, and then my daughter would come in and go, Dad, can you print out this colouring in sheet for me? It's like, I'm too busy. I'm I've got these more important things to do. And then kind of realising she just wanted 5 minutes of my time. So getting used to that when you're in the middle of something, just stopping and actually taking the time to engage and give them the attention that they want, and then everyone's happy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like every dad that's a good dad feels like shit. Like feels like a shit dad from time to time. Because at least you're self-aware enough to notice. You know what I mean? It's the ones that don't even notice that you're not going to notice it if you're sort of just self-involved. So I kind of feel the same sometimes. You do something and afterwards you're like, that was not a good way to approach it. It's like just these little kids just want your time.
Yeah, there's been moments where you're like, I can't come to football on Saturday because I just got to go to work, or if I can't come to this important thing at school because I've just got to do this concrete pour or something, where you're like, those moments you do have to. I mean, running a business, you're going to compromise some of those things, and you're going to have to forego some of them for the business. But I think you can get too carried away with it and miss out on other important things, right?
Yeah, 100%. And obviously our generation's a bit different now. The dads are a lot more involved than maybe our dads were, right, when we were young, and especially our dads. But so it's definitely a different kind of mentality. But my wife saying a few nights ago, my wife was like, she goes, I don't like this, like coming home late. like you leave and it's dark, you come home and it's dark,
Yeah.
and like she's like, oh, I'll just be poor. We can just be poor. We don't
Yeah,
have to,
yeah.
we don't have to do this. She's like, I'll be happy to be poor. We can all just like, just
If you're home.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
prefer that you be home, and it's kind of like we kind of laugh about it, but there's also like a reality in there of like it's a constant dance, of like
Yeah.
we want to make money so we can get ahead and we can do all the things that we want to provide for our families, and at the same time they also want our time. So it's definitely sometimes, in all honesty, as a man, it can be very it can be frustrating, and you can feel like you're getting pulled in all directions.
Totally. Yeah, you do. And you just got to weigh up at that point in time which direction to go in, right?
Yeah.
A balance has just got to be a balance. You're not going to be everything all the time to your kids when you're trying to run a business, but at the same time, how important is this email that you're sending? Do you need to send it right now? Can you hang out with your kids and send it once they're gone to bed? Or finding
100%.
that balance.
And with all that in mind, what is success to you now, Ben? Like when I go, what is success? What do you think success is?
I think my idea of success has changed a lot, especially having kids, right? Like, so typically success would be, big house, nice cars, boat, all that kind of stuff. I've since realized that success is, being happy is part of success. Having good relationships with people in general. So being happy in your life, but also just enjoying all the people around you is success, and having time is success, right? So you could have all the money in the world and no time. That's financially successful, but you might not necessarily be happy. So I think success is having time, good relationships, and enough money to kind of live well. Yeah.
Yeah. And what is it? What do you, when you say being happy, what do you mean by that? Like what is for you? And you look back, you go, yeah, man, I'm happy. What are the boxes that are ticked?
I think being happy is, just being grateful for what you've got and kind of where you're at. For me, it's just kind of enjoying every day, right? Like seeing the positives and things, enjoying relationships with your kids, and just those little moments. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like you can have. I always thought like the epitome of not non-happiness, whatever you call that, is having everything that you've ever wanted and not being satisfied.
Yeah.
Like that would be the epitome of dark, darkness. Like
Totally. Because a lot of people are searching for happiness in those places, right? And they're trying to just buy the next thing or upgrade the next thing to make themselves happy, but it doesn't change anything. Whereas if you're just kind of grateful for what you do have, all of a sudden you don't need much else, right?
100%. And I think that's a great way for us to close off our chat, mate. Thanks for coming on. The last question always is, did you have fun?
Yeah, heaps of fun.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I had a real good time as well. And there was like a good little nuggets in here that I'll listen back to. So I appreciate you coming on, Ben.
Yeah, sweet. Cheers.